everyone. Hello.
Hello.
This is Ozlem. I'm a professional coach and co-founder of SparkUs, together with Dani, my other co-founder. And Dani is a designer. I'm a coach. We are handling different parts of the a digital coaching business like SparkUs. Uh, Actually, today, unfortunately, we both have health issues, but we didn't want to postpone this conversation. We believe that it is an important topic to discuss, especially at the beginning of the year when we're looking into the year and defining what to do in this coming period. So please bear with us if we are low on energy. But we will try to do our best. As I mentioned, we believe that it's an important discussion to have. So we will start with that. Anything you want to add before we start, Danny? Maybe we can wait for a few minutes for people to join in the meanwhile. Just
Welcome,
introduce
everyone.
yourself, maybe. Yeah.
I want to welcome everyone. As Özlem stated, we have health issues. I'm fairly exhausted, but I was looking forward to meet you and share this webinar. Hope will satisfy everyone.
Yeah.
Whenever we are ready, we can start.
Yeah. We can have the slides, please. Thank you. So, why we are here today? What are the conversations we're going to base on? Last year, we've done a survey among HR people, and we looked into what lies ahead in coaching for HR, with the focus of what's really going on in the world right now. But before moving into the survey, we just want to build the bigger picture for you. And I'm going to give the mic to Dani, because there is a lot on our plate, and he, being a designer, is a great trend reader. So I'm just going to give the mic to him to first describe the big picture for us.
So let's dive into it. We wanted to start with this slide because we truly believe that there is a lot on our plates. Actually, 2 years ago, when 2.5 years ago, when the pandemic just erupted, all of our focus was on how can we continue on working with the pandemic, how can we work from home, what are the challenges of remote work, and there was a crisis. Everyone was aware of that crisis, and everyone owned the crisis, and we just raised above it. However, that crisis turned into a set of crises that really disrupted the way we work, as well as the way we perceive our work life on the go. You can see some words here like trade wars, high inflation, hybrid workplace. These are some of the crises that I'm talking about. Let's start a quick tour around what we are dealing with today. So in HR, recently we had great resignations. Huge part of young generation are not happy with working, so they're resigning their work. They have the financial liberty, freedom to do so. They have cryptocurrencies, NFTs. They are working from home with this gig economy. So they are more on the economic freedom side, and they don't want to work for money. They don't want to work to earn a living wage. They want to feel purposeful. They want meaning in the work they are doing. And currently we are dealing with energy crisis. We are dealing with trade wars, the logistic crisis, which translates into more of a economic crisis that we are walking into. So with high inflation, and by the way, high inflation, the reason of the high inflation is mostly based on the pandemic, since China cannot produce the chips, and they cannot ship it from China towards the um, West. We have less products. So we used to live in a time that the only problem was selling the service or the product. After a long while of the real issue was producing the products. In 80s, it was very important to produce and reach the market. And in recent years, we became we forgot that. Now it's came back. It's here. You know, it's really difficult to procure the necessary um, materials to produce the services and the products that we are selling. So companies are in dire situation. They are dealing with crisis all the time, and young generation don't have any issue with fulfilling the missing pieces that companies are looking for. They are looking for a purpose. By the way, we started to talk about purpose and meaning before the pandemic. However, now it's more relevant. We see Me Too movement taking having attraction, and Black Lives Matter. These um, kind of issues, Green New Deal, actually started to bake into our way of doing work, because not only because the young generation wants to feel purposeful, but also more and more people want to employ the services or buy the products of the companies which are responsible for the future of our species. So this outlook generates new, big or small, crises all around. We don't. If you look back, each month we have a new crisis. Now we are dealing with Russia and Ukraine crisis. Probably in a couple of months we will forget about it because we will have a new crisis at hand. So in this outlook, it's really important to read the results of the survey accordingly. Özlem, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to add one more thing there, which is very relevant, especially after the pandemic. What we found out was what was actually possible technologically is now in everybody's life, remote workforce and hybrid workplace. So this means this also adds to the talent crisis that we are facing next to the great resignation, because that also means the place you live is no longer uh, equal to place you work. I mean, physically, maybe you're working from home, but you might be working in one country, but the job that you're serving could be in another one. So people are no longer bound by where they are working. So that also means maybe it was in the past creating a burden for people because they have families, they have other responsibilities in life, and the mobility of the workforce was somehow limited physically as well. But at the moment, as I mentioned, since most of the work is going digital, that physical mobility issue somehow is no longer there. Therefore, we would see more and more people, living in a country or a place or a city that they love to be in, but or maybe they have to be in also due to their other responsibilities, but working elsewhere. So that would also create a more global movement of the talent, maybe not physically, but definitely in terms of companies employing people. So that also adds on to the issue of maintaining our talent, engaging our talent. That's definitely a part of the scenario. So let's move into the survey with this bigger picture in mind. As I mentioned, we did the survey last year with HR professionals from Europe and US, uh, with also some business people joining, and we asked about the effects of digitalization, effects of the pandemic, how they see this big picture reflecting in organizations. We focused on remote working, diversity, and generation issues. So, what we found out as a result of this?
So when we jump into the results, we wanted to start with the key takeaways because I believe this slide really showcase the changing times, and how it's important to be able to have a contextual understanding of the issues at hand. Early pandemic, the top three organizational priorities for the HR was well-being, remote working challenges, and leadership development. So, before jumping to today's world, let us contemplate on what these was meaning in early pandemic. Well-being in the early pandemic was all about physical safety and being able to work in a healthy environment without catching COVID. So it was all about investing in um, physically arranging workforce, as well as supporting people around the issues of COVID, around the issues of um, living and staying at home. This also was a problem that remote working challenges was addressing. Like setting up new tools in order to help everyone to work remotely, and leadership development in early pandemic was about this as well. We were expecting our leaders to be able to lead from their home remotely, and actually adopt to the crisis and create new solutions in order to generate value and keep the business floating. Keep the business floating was the motto of early pandemic. However, when we come to today, in past 2 years, um, companies learned how to work remotely, and now it's not about only floating the boat, but also it's about thriving and creating new value and growing. We see some companies hugely benefited from the pandemic process, and they restructured themselves in a way that they become so valuable. Now, when we look at now, the priorities, we still have well-being on the bottom of the top three. We have organizational development and we have leadership development. However, what we understand from leadership development, organizational development, and well-being is totally changed. From leadership development, now we understand leaders that can lead and engage young talents. They are resilient and they keep the company resilient as well. So we need to train our leaders to become more um, facilitators to young talent so they can generate more value. Coach like leaders, we are talking about coach like leaders, we are talking about leadership 4.0. So it's not only about remotely leading their team, it's all about engaging the team, helping them to generate value, and becoming a facilitator. Organizational development, again, organizational development was not on our radar in the early pandemic because we were all about keeping the business floating. Whereas now, since we see the opportunities, we are investing in organizational development in a way that we want to create a company, create a culture that is resilient, that is um, more agile, because we all know that the crises at hand are not going anywhere and we will deal with new crises all the time. So we want our organization to be resilient, as well as our leaders. And at the third priority, well-being, still it's a high priority, by the way. Our understanding is well-being is shifted as well. Instead of physical well-being, now we have psychological well-being, where we are investing uh, in our employees' uh, mindfulness, their psychological health, their psychological safety, that we can see the trend from supporting employees for their work-life balance,
Yeah.
supporting them psychologically. Maybe Ozlem will take over from here
Yeah.
and explain what's going on there.
Yeah. Before moving into the details of the well-being, I just want to add one more thing to organizational development. Especially in the early pandemic, as Dani mentioned, it was more about floating the company. So it was like, oh, we're going to develop the organization later. Let's now focus on keeping the performance going on, or at least not dropping completely. So on one level, it was more about it maybe a little bit sounded like a luxury to develop the organization as a whole in that moment. But at the same time, what the pandemic showed us uh, is that those organizations who had the culture of agile, so agile movement was already happening, but it was more on the organizational charts, let's say, more like processes. But those organizations who have the culture of the agile mindset, who have the culture of being resilient, who have the culture of a coaching culture, for instance, where the leaders are not just doing command and control, but they are really giving space to people to act. They basically, we saw them not only surviving that pandemic period, but thriving in the period as well. They adapted to the challenges of that period very well, and they basically thrived. So now, as Dani mentioned, there are many crises happening. So we see that, oh, so yes, maybe we handled that one somehow, but if we can change the organizational culture, if our organization was not there yet, if we change the culture, being more agile, being more inclusive, as Dani mentioned, where there is the psychological safety for people to speak up, to innovate, etc., then it means that our organization can also thrive. Although there are many crises happening. So that is a very important shift, I believe, now with the definition of the organizational development. So it's not a surprise that it's really up on the list. And when we come to the well-being, as Dani mentioned, the well-being's definition and the focus changed. It was early, on the early stages, it was about staying safe, making people, creating that environment where either, if possible, employees are working from home, or making it possible that they can somehow, if even though they're working in the office, that they can be safe around each other. So it was more around that physical well-being. Now, when we're talking about well-being, we're talking about psychological safety. We're talking about work-life balance, because when people started working from home, that expectation that, oh, what if they don't work, suddenly shifted to another place where people couldn't stop working. So there are lots of burnout issues. And when we're talking about the great resignation and we're talking about the engagement issues, we also see that there is a link between feeling well, being well, and how that organization supports that really happening. So that is a important piece to it. And there is also a very recent survey of the International Coach Federation, ICF, on consumers' awareness about coaching. That also reflects a very similar topic. It is seen that there is some kind of a change in terms of a difference, let's say, in geographies where more established markets see well-being as one of the top priorities, versus emerging markets see it as a little bit like a luxury, like it will happen sometime later. First, we need to focus on other areas. But I mean, I don't know who are watching us on the audience today. You might be thinking, if you're coming from an emerging market, that yeah, well-being is not that important in our area. I should say one thing, that the research shows it also differentiates between different generations. And although older generations don't consider well-being a top topic, younger generations say that they would reach out to a coach for well-being reasons as a top priority. So that means, since we're talking about attracting young talent, keeping them in the organization, keeping them engaged, especially in this area of the Great Resignation, that also means, even though it looks like a kind of a luxury in your geography, please note that it will be here and it will be staying if you want to attract young talent for your organization. So we should say that well-being would be more talked about in the coming periods, I believe. Do you want to add something, Danny, or I can?
No,
I
we
can.
can go to the next slide, and
Yeah.
I want to talk about a little bit about the strategic HR goals. So the company goals for HR are a little different than strategic HR goals. So, however, we see the mirroring of those goals in HR strategic goals. The top five were deliver an increase in the organizational performance. So these doesn't change. At the same time, I want to underline organizational performance and the obstacles uh, on reaching the perfect performance are always changing. So since the obstacles are changing, our way of approaching this problem is changing, but we can see that strategic HR goals, top of the line, is delivering an increase in organizational performance. Then we see uh, inclusive and diverse culture in the organization. We will see a lot of implementation of DEI projects, diversity, equity, inclusion projects in the near future, and we started to see some theme-based programs that we are running around female leadership, diversity, etc., with coaching. And third in the line, we have create a vast plan of upskilling and reskilling in the organization. We know that pandemic just speed up the process of this reinventing our businesses. So we need to reskill our workforce pretty fast, and they need to most of our employees, they need to get accustomed with the new way of working, which with pandemic we see that it is possible, much more possible than before, because our leaders now are aware that they need to utilize digital tools, remote tools, and it's not the end of the world, and it might be even helpful for them to succeed and to thrive. So even the uh, most tough cases, that stereotypical old school leader that is resisting to new tools became curious and actually supportive to these new digital tools to help them thrive in this business. Therefore, we need to make necessary investment to the rest of the workforce so they can become acquainted with these new technologies, with this new era of creating value. The fourth line, we have transformation of organization at large and global scale. Um, this transformation, okay, your company may be going through a globalization process, or maybe you are working in a global company and you need to reinvent the new way of working in this new world, because as Özlem mentioned, your workforce is not bound by geography, and your business is not bound by geography as well. and most of our businesses, they are trying to open up to new markets, as well as trying to strengthen their operations abroad by understanding different needs of different markets and different cultures. And at the fifth position, we have transform the organization in a remote working environment. So, as a strategy, this is different than having, like a necessity. As a strategy, some of the companies that we work with actually switching to hybrid workforce because they see the benefits of it,
Mhm.
rather than see it as a must-do process, as a obligatory situation. Since we know that with the pandemic, some people are working very well from their home or remotely. Now companies are trying to find the right balance of that hybrid workforce in order to generate the value without crushing their employees, with like supporting them and giving them enough tools so they can thrive. Do you have anything to add here, Azam, or we
No, we
can
can
pass
move
to
into
the next?
what all these means, yeah, for development needs of organizations.
Yeah. So this strategic goals translates into development needs of the organization. So we started with the company goals, then we continued on with the HR strategic goals. Now, when we come to development needs of the organizations, you can see that it almost perfectly mirrors the strategic goals of the company and the HR strategy as well. So at the top of the line, again, we have developing managers as leaders. We all know that manager doesn't necessarily mean a leader. However, in these times, it's utmost important to develop the leader as leader. I know that developing leaders is a long issue. It doesn't change at all.
Yeah,
So
it's quite a usual suspect on
from
the list.
the beginning, we had these issues. However, now um, it has a new framework. We don't need to develop our leaders as a uh, strategy implementer manager role. We need to develop our leaders as facilitators, as um, visionaries, as we need to equip them with necessary tools so they can engage and facilitate their team members so they can thrive. World Economic Forum calls it Leadership 4.0, where the role of the leader is not only to make the right decision, but also onboard the team in order to execute the right strategies and be agile and resilient enough to find the right moves in the right time. On the second uh, at the second of our list, we have developed our talents. So it's not only about leaders; it's also about talents, and we need to help them. We need to develop them in order to adjust them to this new way of working. So they need to be resilient, not only with the market, but they need to be resilient with their ideas. They need to be resilient with um, their way of generating value, and they need to overcome any obstacles in their way so they can create success for the company. At the third line, we have more diverse talent pipeline. We see more and more companies are investing in this diversity projects, and it's not only about picking the right diversity calls, diverse employees, and mounting them into teams. But it's also about supporting this diverse talent pipeline so they can thrive and take their rightful place in the team, as well as supporting to team to become more inclusive and more understanding of these subtle differences, and they can benefit from the richness of this diverse culture. So it has both polarities in these development needs. On the one hand, we need to support the diverse.
I think we lost Dani for a while. So before he comes back, I just want to underline one thing here. Even though the development needs look like they are very much like the usual suspects, like leadership development, talent development, diversity in the organization, generations. We've been talking about generations for a long, long time. But what we used to do when we were talking about development, we were focusing more into trainings, giving trainings, learning processes for people. And our main focus was more around, giving information to the people. So when we were talking about L&D efforts in organizations, the focus was more around, building LMS systems, giving trainings, etc. But now what we're seeing is there is this big unknown that we're dealing with. Therefore, yes, there are some certain basic things that people can learn, while it is no longer just limited to getting information, but it also involves, for people to transform themselves in order to transform the organization, in order to transform their teams, their team members, the way they work, to transform the culture of the organization. So these move more into areas of coaching and mentoring, as we're going to discuss. So when you're looking into these efforts, please also map in your minds how to bring coaching and mentoring to every level of this list, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. Since you're back, Dani, I just made a small intro to the next slide, but I will give you the mic again, because you didn't touch on to the developing virtual leadership capacities. So I'm just going to give the mic to you to finish it up, and I'm going to continue with the next slide.
Okay. So I hope I didn't disengage you, but let's jump into develop virtual leadership capabilities, and we see that virtual leadership capabilities are still in need, but the new is not. It's not only about leading from abroad, from remotely, from home, but it's about finding the right balance between checking your workforce constantly and giving them enough space so they can thrive. So when you're physically in the same space, it's easier to understand the energy of your workforce, the energy of your team, and insert yourself as a leader at the right time. Whereas when you're doing this remotely, it's more about creating this right rapport with your employees, this trustful relation where you can monitor without being intrusive your workforce. You understand their needs, their struggles, without being controlling in the process, and supporting them in such a way that they feel you right behind them, not at top of them. So developing virtual leadership capabilities has something to do with coaching skills, with relational skills, rather than developing the leaders to utilize Teams or Zoom or something like that. It's not about tools, it's more about creating the right culture and right mentality for both parties, for leaders and their employees as well. If you want, we can switch to the next slide.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the connection loss, by the way.
No, it was okay. We were discussing still.
So when we dwell into coaching and mentoring programs, so again, one level deeper inside the development programs, coaching and mentoring programs uh, started to take a larger portion of the efforts made by the company. So it's not only training, and coaching and mentoring programs are not a small piece of that training process, but they're gaining access, and their area is enlarging. And since the um, coaching mentoring programs generates value and results, we will see that these efforts will uh, gain traction, and they will enlarge in terms of addressing the issues of strategic goals of HR and development needs of the company. So we asked our attendees which of these programs they are running in their companies. As you can see at the top of the list, we have mentoring. We know it's easier to run, and it has many different ways, but at the end of the day, mentoring programs gaining more traction. With mentoring programs, it's mostly about finding the right cultural fit. There are different mentoring programs which we can talk about in another webinar. And when you look at the list, top four is actually staple of this list: mentoring, executive coaching for leaders, internal coaches within HR, and team coaching. Özlem, can you
I will just share one thing before I click on it. It is also almost like the title of coaches outside. Like, I'm a mentor, I'm an executive coach, I'm an internal coach, I'm a team coach. So we always use these words very abundantly. But as you're going to see, the focus is starting shifting. So here you go, Dani.
So, when we were asking this question a couple of years ago, this mid-tier three items were not even in the list. However, these are gaining a huge traction in recent years. On top of it, we have coaching programs on specific teams. Specific theme we are talking about, maybe it's a coaching for women leadership, it's a coaching for a well-being program, it's a talent development coaching, because in recent years companies realized it's not all about pouring money to coaching and pour coaching to every problem that we have at hand. So if you have a leadership program, assign a coach to that leader. If you have a talent engagement program, assign a coach to that talent. What we have, okay, let's pour some coaching over it. It doesn't work that way. We have to create a framework and a structure for mentoring and coaching programs so that they can result in return on investment that is addressing our strategic goals, addressing our development needs, rather than having a tool as a band-aid to showcase that we are investing in solving the problem. These theme programs actually create measurable results for these themes within a specific cohort. On the second item is managers trained as a coach like managers. We see this is gaining a lot of traction. Coaching as a leadership tool, as a tool in the toolbox of the leaders, is gaining a lot of traction. Not only it helps to engage the talents, but also talents are looking for that kind of sponsorship, that kind of facilitation, so they can become more relevant for the business. They want to feel that they add value. They want to feel that they are thinking and their thoughts are important for the business. So coaching for leaders, coaching as a tool for leaders, helping them to listen their employees and guiding them to generate more value.
And I should add one more thing there. It's when we're talking about coaching as a toolbox. One thing is about the skill set of managers gaining that skill set. But at the same time, it is very important when we're talking about, when we go to the very first slide about that big shift that is going on out there, that big unknown. Using coaching as a mentality by the leaders is also important, because as you, most of you know, coaching is all about, navigating your way in the unknown. So making managers gain that perspective is already very important. And of course, to engage their people, as Dani mentioned, they need to be using coaching skills more and more where the situation allows us. And
And
the last one.
the third one that gaining traction is digital coaching tools, including SparkUs. We see that companies are employing digital coaching tools in order to address a larger coaching need in the company. These digital coaching tools are plenty, and there's a variety of it. Couple of years ago, nobody was talking about digital coaching. Now everybody seems to somehow adopted the mantle of coaching into their support tools as well. You can see digital coaching tools to help uh, mindfulness in the company, any kind of algorithm based tool that is claiming that they are doing coaching, or a coaching tool to help employees to select the right training, or to a tool that matches the right coach with the right coaching. That one, I'm not quite sure if it's if we shall call it digital coaching, where we know everyone calls it a digital coaching. However, it's just a matching tool towards other tools like SparkUs, helping the employee kickstart their coaching journey in the platform so they can have their one-on-one time with their coach in a more productive and impactful way. However, nonetheless, digital coaching tools are gaining traction.
I should add that we are planning to do another webinar on digital coaching tools. So if you're interested, we can have a deeper conversation around that. But one thing that is important to note about highlight about what Dennis said is when we're talking about digital coaching tools, organizations might be using digital coaching for many different things, and they might be meaning many different other things from each other. But one thing for sure, technology can also support us about the upper elements in this list, especially when we want to bring coaching to masses in the organization, like all young talents, all first line managers, every manager thinking about, let's say, engagement issues. So those kind of large team topics can be covered with the support of technology, which is also important to note. I'm aware
This
of the
is a
time.
great segue for our next
Yeah,
slide. Ozlem,
next slide. Yeah,
can you
I
switch the
would go
slide
there.
to
Yeah, I just want to.
why we are what are we expecting from coaching and mentoring? We summarize the top 5 just to
Yeah, but
tease you. We
yeah,
will share the presentation afterwards. These
yeah.
are the full list of the expectations from coaching and mentoring. We are expecting a lot from coaching and mentoring, but if we come back a little, the top 5 was increased engagement, leadership development, improving feedback culture, improving communication, and performance coaching. When we look at the list, we see predominantly it's about leadership, investing in leaders, developing them, and helping them to help their team members, like improving the feedback culture. By the way, I just want to underline one thing. When we are investing in feedback culture, it's not only investing in the leaders, but it's also investing in the team members. Because at the end of the day, feedback happens between two parties. And it's also important to receive that feedback and translate into action. So when we see as a whole, um, it is exciting for us to be in the field of coaching as SparkUs. We used to be in a more avant-garde, futuristic position, where most of our dialogues resulted in, you are doing a great job, but it's futuristic. We hope we will work with you in near future. Whereas now we are having more conversations around, this is the right time to start to do this. This is the right time to invest in coaching. This is the right time to invest in technology for coaching. It's uh, it's about really transforming the business, transforming the way we work in such a way that we are not struggling with each other to generate value. We are cooperating with each other to generate more value and handle the crises. When there's no crisis around, it's easier to continue the business as is,
Yeah.
business as usual. But when we are dealing with constant crises that are changing all the time, our culture plays a much more important role in order to keep the business thriving, not only surviving but thriving. And the coaching and mentoring programs, when we see the expectations and when we see the result in practice, I might say these expectations are not misplaced, but at the same time, in order to address these issues, we need to invest necessary resources in order to help these programs to come to fruition, rather than running band-aid programs that are short-term and harder to track the results. So this is, I believe, very good point to invest in coaching and mentoring programs, because both the employees are asking for it and leaders are open to this cultural shift at the same time. Özlem, would you like to add something before
I would
we
add
come to
one more
closing?
thing before we close. I mean, we can get out of the presentation, but I just want to add one more thing about what you said. One is now the conversations with our clients also changed in the sense of, you know, maybe the maturity of the about coaching also increased. Like it was more around like, oh, we have this one person to coach, or we have this one person even to fix. In the past it was more about fixing people, fixing things, but now we see that organizations are also more aware of where they can benefit from coaching. And that also means that we can, with these expectations, you see them already out there, like in terms of engagement, leadership development, culture development. So we're talking about more vast range reaches of coaching on one level. And at the same time, the themes that we are working on also increased in this period. So it was more focused on certain themes that were like the easy to get areas, let's say. But now the topics we are discussing with our clients is also very team based, very different than it was. So I believe what we have been discussing from the very beginning is taking its roots in the organizations as well. Just wanted to share that. So we might have some questions. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write them into the chat. I suppose we would be able to see them. I just received nice comments. Thank you for those who find it insightful, the data. And I see that there is a interest on doing a digital coaching process as well. You can connect us over, our LinkedIn page, obviously, through Twitter, through Instagram, and of course, not the last but not least, from our website. you can write to us and we can just maybe do a demo for you. So if you have additional thoughts around it, we would be happy to hear. But in the meanwhile, I see the interest into the topics. Thank you. And if you have additional questions, we have a few more minutes, and we can wait and answer them.
Meanwhile, I will ask a question, Ozlem. It's
Go ahead.
unconventional, I know. What was the most interesting question that you received in the recent times about coaching programs?
Good question. Well, discussion around technology is always there. So the core question generally is, are people really using this? That is generally the idea. And I can understand the concern. So one thing for sure, we know that certain digital tools like e-learning tools, for instance, their usage rates are globally, I mean, not specific to any platform, but globally it's very low. So that is one thing. So that's out of that data, people assume that a digital tool won't be used much, obviously. And the other thing is, of course, people don't know what to expect from coaching if it's the first time that they're encountering coaching, because it is a different mindset. Because what we are used to, even in our school system, is there will be an instructor telling us what to do, and we're going to do that. The other way around, the instructor or the coach in this case would be asking me questions and I have the answers to it. Is a total different approach, total different mindset. So when people join coaching, then they have the question of, they don't know what to expect really. So they just ask for a coach, then the coach starts asking them questions. And if they're not well prepared for the process, then they might feel like, what is this? Why am I not being told what to do? So for some people, if it doesn't have a certain structure, if this coaching program doesn't have a certain structure, and if it's not well defined, most of the time we see that it turns into some gym membership even. Like, I just applied to receive coaching, but I just maybe had one session, didn't get what it was, so it just dropped off. So those kind of experiences, I think, give L&D people the concern that going through masses in the organization using a digital tool would create some resistance. So that is the most typical question, I would say, I'm answering all the time when I'm speaking with clients.
So we have a new question, by the way.
Oh, do we? How nice.
Yeah.
Julian
asked, yeah, can you read the question? Yeah.
Yeah, it says, does the avant-garde approach you use help prevent burnouts in the remote workforce dynamics that companies have adopted? Acknowledging the emotional and psychological well-being of a workforce is definitely pivotal in this current age. I would say yes, but I would give the mic to you, maybe, Dani, to add
we
more to it.
recently run a program. You can find the case study in the platform, the case study that we had with WeTransfer. They were struggling with burnout. And the burnout issues are not only about working all the time, but it's also about losing the inner balance, inner focus, and actually losing the track of your priorities and over investing in some of the priorities, in this case work and work, can result in the draining and eventually burnout of the employee's psyche. Özlem might
Yeah.
have some answer on it. I just want to say yes, coaching helps to create a framework in the people's mind so they can reassess their priorities, but not only prioritize them, also balance them in a more um, humane and not draining way. So it's more uh, of an issue of a balanced life rather
Mhm.
than forgetting about business. If you tell someone to forget about business, it doesn't work. You need to remind them the rest of the life so they can spare sometimes to recharge, even if their only priority is to succeed in business. Still, if you don't rest, if you don't give enough time to other parts of your life, you will I will, and everyone will, I believe, lose the inner energy. If we don't invest in it, we will lose it. And with coaching, we are addressing those kind of
Yeah.
issues as well.
A- And it's also important to note that there are two parts of burnout. One is what happens with the individual, and also what happens in their system, in their environment, the organizations, cultures, expectations, etc. So if you're just, as an organization, just sending a person to a coach to handle their burnout issues, then it is again a little bit like a fixing of one individual. If the organization is brave enough, and with some of our clients did, if they somehow do a organization-wide program to handle burnout, to handle support to talent for their talent engagement. If you do a larger approach, then what is also possible is to recognize certain threads within the organization. And yes, there is coaching confidentiality, and of course we don't share what person A said in a session. But if we have, let's say, 50 people that are going through the same program, all the coaches can come together. That's what we generally do for our clients, and see what are some common threads that are going on, and then we can inform the clients, the HR, not about our individual coaches, but we can then speak about, like, look, there is this thing about that you need to support your, let's say, managers to be like this or that, or you need to work on these kind of processes. This is something that we heard again and again from everyone who's going through some difficulty. So if the organization is brave enough to look into, how can we support our talents as a larger group, rather than just fixing a few people who just had to say, like, I'm going through a burnout, then the organization can create more preventive measures, and the organization can create some policies, and they can support the well-being of their employees in a larger sense. So it is like a win-win-win situation for all those who are involved. That's also important to note here.
I see that we are at the end of our time, so I wanted to properly close the webinar with thanking everyone to be here and
Yeah.
listening us till the end. I hope it was as helpful for you as it is for us to see the overview of the current climate, as well as the data that we received from our attendees.
Yeah, there are
Ozlem, would you
some.
like to
Yeah,
close?
I just see that the two people asked about burnout sub managers. I would just very quickly say yes to their questions. They're asking, like, do you help also leaders to support their learn also to manage remotely, not to create burnout. I would just use it as a teaser for a future webinar and just give the information saying yes, we do. But up to another time, I believe. So I thank everyone who joined us and engaged with us. Hope it was insightful for you all. We really enjoyed having this conversation with you. And until next time, see you all.
Bye.